We don't need another podcast. Enough already. This is a message I've heard a lot on YouTube recently. People are tired of podcasts, but I have a different perspective on this. I think you need to make a podcast if you have something to say. Of course, the market is very saturated. There are a lot of people making podcasts. Every day we see new podcasts coming up, but that doesn't mean that every market has been fulfilled. There are a lot of markets that are underserved. And if you have a company, a product, a service, or a niche interest, and you can't find any good information around that topic, and you want to talk about it and you know about it, or are interested in researching or interviewing people that are subject matter experts, you should make a podcast. I think that's great. I think the the podcast scene is fragmenting, where if you serve a niche market very well, you can make a good living. I was listening to Alex Hormozy recently talking about two basic frameworks for making money. You can provide a little bit of value to a lot of people, or a lot of value to a small group of people, and it's much easier to provide a lot of value to a small group of people. It's hard to compete with the big players in the game. Yeah, you're probably not going to be the next Joe Rogan, but that's fine. You can make a successful living. You can make a nice career out of podcasting in a niche market. And I would, as I said in my last video, decide if this is a hobby or a business. If it's a hobby, great. It's interesting to talk to someone who has a similar interest and record it, and other people can get involved in the conversation online. That's the initial idea of social media. That's great. But also, if you're interested in turning it into a business, you definitely should. And maybe you already have a business and you want to make a podcast around that idea. Maybe you are a maybe you're a contractor and you build homes, and you want to talk about the industry, things you've learned, different services or subcontractors that you use that you want to recommend. They might even want to pay you to appear. So if you're a contractor and you work with plumbers, architects, electricians, I'm not in the industry, so I don't know all the different players, but that would be something I would do. You could invite them on for collaborations. You could talk about shout outs and co-production and possible sponsorship, or you could just be using it to promote your business. So there are a lot of ways to make money in a niche market. You want to make sure that you are. The last video I talked about exactly what you should do when you're starting out. Actually, was all the mistakes that I had made. You want to be very specific about your avatar, the person you are trying to reach, the person you are going after, so that you can provide content that is going to help them. You want to be valuable. You want to be useful. You want to be seen as a subject matter expert, and you want to be seen as someone. If you're not, which is fine, you don't need to be a subject matter expert in everything, but you should be inviting people onto the show that can talk about that subject. That's what's really interesting. That's what makes a podcast interesting. You have one subject, and then you find people in the industry that know about that subject that can provide their own experience, their own history, their own unique storytelling abilities. And that's so interesting. And I think there's so many. Once you go down that rabbit hole and you see all the things the internet has to offer, and all the people that really know about a subject that maybe don't break through to the mainstream, which is fine. You don't have to break through to the mainstream anymore to be successful on the internet. And actually, you probably don't want to. The worst thing you could be is famous and poor. Most people that are famous on YouTube are not poor. They make a good living, decent living. But there's a lot of fame. If you're one of those big YouTubers, you might not be able to go out for coffee in your hometown, stuff like that. I would not want to be Mr. Beast. He probably gets mobbed everywhere he goes. He makes a lot of money, sure, but my channel's not about that. My channel is helping normal people who are not exactly content creators but want to make stuff on the internet. Maybe they're not too tech savvy. I just record on my cell phone, no microphone. I use CapCut to enhance the sound at the end, and that's about it. I barely cut anything. I speak from the top of my head. I speak from the heart, and I want to help people that want to get into this industry. I want to help them start. I want to help them figure out their niche. I want to help them overcome their fears of starting. Usually people are either worried of what you're going to think, because so many people are like, oh, another podcast. Are you really making a podcast? What's wrong with you? But you just have to start. You just have to start somewhere. Gary Vee is another person that I definitely look up to in that sense, a person I've met before. He was working, his family had a liquor store in New Jersey. He saw a niche market, people collect wine. He made a YouTube TV show before anyone was doing that around tasting wines. And that was the start of his media empire. Now, again, you don't have to become Gary Vee, but you could make the next Wine Library TV for your industry. It could be this format, which is more a YouTube video. It could be a podcast, which is a longer format, usually with a guest. And you could create a podcast studio if you have a little bit of money to invest. But there's another way to do it, which is pretty cool. You could do it via some kind of Zoom call. There's a bunch of different applications you can use, where the benefit of this is you have access to the whole country or the whole world to find your guest. So you're not limited to your hometown or people that are near you. If you live in a big city, you might be able to get a pretty good guest list just in your big city. But if you live in a small town, you could also do it with one other person, though. I've seen a lot of podcasts that I like that are just two people and based around topics or current events or market trends. So two people that kind of have a yin-yang relationship. Think of it as a duet, a country duet, maybe a good foil, people that have different perspectives or people that work really well together. Abbott and Costello kind of vibe. Those definitely work. Or it could be guest-centric, where you're always inviting a different guest that brings a different type of subject matter expertise to your podcast. So don't listen to people that say we don't need another podcast. But if you're going to do a podcast, make sure you are creating your own space, your own niche. Try to find those blue oceans if you can. That's something I did. When I started doing YouTube, I started making videos about Brazil in Portuguese as a foreigner, which was an industry that had maybe one other person doing it. Now there are, hundreds. But that was a niche I found, the blue ocean, and there are still a lot of blue oceans. As more people start bringing interesting and new perspectives to the internet, they fragment into subgenres. So there's always going to be a new place. People are always going to want authentic, unique entertainment, which is the original idea of YouTube, and something you don't get on other streaming services, which are becoming very formulaic. Someone just turning on the camera, speaking from their heart about their expertise and passions. That could be you. That's why it's YouTube. Try it out. I'll see you next time. If you have any questions, leave it in the comment section. Peace.